I always have to recheck my focus after it goes on, so maybe just triple check that focus.
Hey guys! How are you doing today? I don't know how I start videos. I've completely forgotten how to start videos. This is my friend Yaz.
Hello.
Would you like to introduce yourself?
I am Yaz, and I am from Australia, and I have my own YouTube channel which I will link below.
That's true.
Or Rachel will link below.
I will link below,
link
yes.
And I am in LA looking for a job, so someone help me out. Nice.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. We made a video for your channel.
My channel.
Where I was talking a little bit about how I'm not depressed anymore.
Yay!
And how that came to be, and now we're gonna talk a little bit related to that about stories and fiction and things that we love and how God speaks to us through those things.
Mm-hmm.
So this video might not be everybody's jam, and that's totally cool. Feel free to skip it if you want. If you would like some more context for some of this, I'm going to link 2 other videos that I've made for past Vitas in the description below. One about prophecy and kind of general overview of how that works and some of my experience with it, and one about Harry Potter and being both a Harry Potter fan, a huge Harry Potter fan, and a Christian, and how those 2 things correlate and interlap.
Tie together.
Yeah.
All that fun stuff.
We're going to talk a little bit about how God speaks to us. What?
What?
What? God
God can speak
God
to
talks
us?
to you
What?
on like a normal... How does that work?
On an everyday basis.
Yeah.
Basically when, like Rachel's explained in her videos about the prophetic, basically when you hear the voice of God, that can be prophetic in a number of different ways. It can be personal to you, or it can be for someone else. When we are going through our everyday life, God uses our own experiences and what we know and what we love to speak to us specifically. I think for me, like when I was learning to hear the voice of God and like follow like the little promptings, for me it was more like feelings based. Like I'd wake up and like something would just come to my heart and I'd be like, ooh, that's like maybe I should share that story today, or I don't know if this feeling that I'm feeling is actually mine. I feel like it's maybe my friends, or that kind of stuff. And so for me, like God specifically uses like my feelings, so I need to be very self-aware myself personally, so that I know exactly where I'm at, and I know how I should be feeling that day, so that if something isn't lining up in my personal feelings, it may be because of someone else's feelings that's either in the room or someone that's been put on my heart that day.
I definitely hear God differently. I feel like for me, I heard someone describe it as like everyone has a conscience. It's like that kind of little voice.
This is my analogy too. I already said it.
Everyone has a conscience. They have it like kind of in the back of their head, even if they're not really thinking about right or wrong, or like what they should be doing in a given moment. There's still a little voice in the back of your head kind of telling you, it's like, what about this? How should you respond? Yeah. It's like, what is the best way to respond to this? And when you have the Holy Spirit in you, you sort of hear that conscience is the Holy Spirit.
Best advice ever! Literally the easiest way to heal.
Yeah. So that's kind of some of my experience with it. But I think the other fun thing that both of us have experienced is that God talks to you in a way that you are going to understand. So sometimes that means he talks to you through like fiction.
Right.
Books and
Books or TV or movies.
musical theater.
Theater.
TV shows.
Or like maybe through someone else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Someone else's experience with something like that they love.
So we wanted to talk a little bit about some of our experiences, our collective experiences with hearing the voice of God through fictional things. I know that I personally have gotten a lot of revelation through things like Harry Potter and different TV shows, even stuff like Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I was talking with some friends one time, and they were talking about how like they love Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but these are Christian friends, and that they don't love how much it has to do with witchcraft and how much like demonic and supernatural stuff is in there. And I'm just like, okay, but what about all the rest of it? Like, Buffy the Vampire Slayer is a story that has witchcraft and other things in it, but it's not about how being a witch is the best thing ever.
Right.
In fact, like, I don't know if you've ever seen Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but like, there's a whole season-long arc about why Willow becoming addicted to magic is a really bad thing. Every story, whether it's a Christian story or a secular story or whatever, tends to have some element of a salvation message in it.
Which is very true.
Because the salvation message is like the story of all humanity. It's not just the story of Jesus.
Right.
Like, everyone needs saving and salvation. And so we put that in our stories and in our fiction. Even if you're not doing it on purpose or you're not like meaning to, it's there.
Like, that's essentially the story of humanity, and that's a story that is the basis for most climaxes of movies or TV or anything. Back a couple years ago, I was watching this TV show called Touch. If you have not watched it, I highly recommend it. The main actor is Kiefer Sutherland, and he is essentially this guy that's trying to figure out how to do life without his wife, with a kid who is manifesting himself as a mute. Like, he doesn't talk, he doesn't like to be touched, but his kid is actually like hearing from the Lord, and it's not specifically referenced, but it is referenced in the fact that like later in the series you find out what he's writing down, which is what his father is following, is the God sequence in science. So if you guys
it's like a mathematical sequence.
It's like a mathematical sequence that is like, it's like the formation of seashells and all that kind of stuff. And so if you watch the show, it's like, it explains like all of that. But essentially what he's doing is he's writing a sequence of numbers, but it's interconnecting people and humanity and their stories, and it shows how like one person stepping out in faith can shift many people's lives for the better. I put it in my brain, I put it into the context of like, Jake's dad is essentially like a new believer, and Jake is the one who is being like the Holy Spirit, like showing him this is how it all connects together, and like if you follow this, things are gonna work out. And the more that he follows it, the more he realizes that the purpose of his life is to like help connect people in, so that they're the way that they like the things that happen don't have to end up being really bad. So it's really interesting, and for sure like one of the quickest and simplest ways that it helped me to unpack a little bit more about like how different people can hear from God, and it was really unpacking for me.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of the interesting thing to me, is that there's a lot of things that if you go into a school of supernatural, or you start learning more about supernatural and how God speaks to people, the church and like the people who have studied this for a very long time, they have these like set things that's like, sometimes God speaks to people through numbers, and these are what each individual number means. Sometimes the colors in a vision or something like that will have really specific meaning, and it tends to have the same meaning over and over and over again.
Right.
So there's like a precedence for God speaking to people in like X, Y, and Z, these ways. And then sometimes it's like fiction, and then it's like a different kind of story, and it turns into a different kind of teaching and experience. The fact that there are a lot of books, like fictional books, that do lean heavily on like Christian theology and stories and things like that. Like C.S. Lewis is famous for bringing like Christian principles into the Chronicles of Narnia series and into a lot of his writing, some of which is fiction, some of which is
theology.
Basically straight theology. I think there's a long history of God showing up and like being in fiction, and just because we're kind of moving away from deliberately focusing on Christianity and like the stories of God and Jesus in fiction, it doesn't mean that it's going away. There's still a lot of theology and ideas in any fiction. Yeah, so this is probably going to be a bit of a longer video, I'm going to be honest, and I'm okay with that. But that just means that if you're watching this and you are still here, thank you so much for sticking with us. You're amazing. Yeah, like we've mentioned, there is a video with this exact same setup on Yaz's channel, and you should check out that video, and you should just check out Yaz in general, because she does cool stuff. And the end. I always end my videos by saying, I hope you get a chance to do something that you love today. And I will see you next time.